How do you like those Lando Norris apples? He wasn't too bad this Singapore Grand Prix quali, was he? Not half bad, and there is context to this. This is the revenge of Lando Norris. I imagine if I'm in Lando Norris's head, I would be sick and tired of hearing about my teammate Oscar Jack Piastri. Oh, Oscar Jack Piastri is the next Ayrton Senna. He's going to be the next world champion. I can't believe he's only in his sophomore season pulling off executing races like he did at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Oh, look at that sexy manoeuvre on Charles Leclerc. How did he manage to fend off Charles Leclerc, notwithstanding McLaren's mini DRS? Lando Norris will be sick to the back teeth of hearing that. And this performance, as at the 21st of the 9th 2024 at the Singapore Grand Prix qualifying, is nothing if not a function of that. You know, I saw a picture of Lando Norris buried deep in the data with the display screen front and centre. This is Lando Norris who now understands per martin of lower lap time that the difference between talent and becoming a champion is indeed preparation. That's how you bridge the gap, and Lando Norris has not come to play this race weekend. How do we know that? Because he dominated 3 practice sessions and qualifying alike. No one got close to him even. Purple sector throughout, but there was a challenge, a not insubstantial one, posed by the racing gods yet and still, yet again to one Lando Norris. What was that, I hear you ask? Well, in Q3, Carlos Sainz did what Carlos Sainz does so frequently these days and stacked it, yeeted it into the barrier on the back of a cheeky oversteer instance, taking too much curb. And again, Carlos Sainz Jr. has that in him. Indeed, you might argue that it's his fundamental constitution that you can never separate those oversteery moments from the Spaniard, the man from Madrid, but yet and still Scuderia Ferrari. But this had a downstream impact on Lando Norris. Why? Because he was on the brink of going purple early, doing what he failed to do at Baku and getting the banker lap in there early, meaning that he was going to be on provisional pole. He'd set a sector 1 and sector 2, both of which were purple, and then the racing gods turned their back on the Lando that Norris is. Carlos Sainz yeeting it into the barrier. This now, as opposed to as different to last week, is double waved yellows which turned to reds. Ergo, get out the throttle. This is danger. I'd argue that Lando Norris maybe could have got away with it last weekend, that he didn't need to go out early in qualifying. This time, however, double waved. That stopped the press. Full stop, new paragraph. There is no getting away with that. And testament to that fact is Max Verstappen got his time deleted, didn't he? The challenge to Lando Norris was never his speed this race weekend. He's plenty quick enough. It was all mental. Mental fortitude, resilience. Could he bounce back from the adversity, having gone purple sector 1, sector 2, and having that opportunity yanked away from him by virtue of Carlos Sainz's crash? Could he overcome that circumstance, whereas he did not in Baku? Could he fix for that? Oh, the humanity. Indeed, he did. Could he ever? Because he went out there again and nailed it, purple sectors across the board. And this is Lando Norris around this track in that car. Nobody's going to get close to the chap. But again, the question for Lando and the challenge for him tomorrow during the race isn't ever going to be one of quickest. Is he the quickest of the 20 on the grid in that papaya coloured car? Of course, abso-flipping-lutely. But as far as executing, the question tomorrow will be, can he break his duck? 6 times to date he started on pole. 6 times he hasn't made it to the end of lap 1 in front. He needs to end that duck. And the root cause of all that, it's mental. This isn't physical anymore for Lando, because we see the pace, the purple sectors. He needs to go out there and execute. No longer can we have the dodgy starts. No longer can he be meek and mild in the defence down to turn 1 of Max Verstappen. Point your car at that apex. Defend that turn 1 with your life, Sir Lando. Surely this has to be the modus operandi. forced the hand of Andrea Stella and Zach Brown as far as the team orders. This should no longer be a question now, Lando. If you go out there tomorrow and do what you are capable of doing, execution commensurate with Lando Norris is not insubstantial talents behind the wheel of an F1 car. That's what I'm looking to see. And he needs to repeat that. This can't be a single race example. If indeed we are talking about this circumstance under the umbrella of challenging Max Verstappen for a championship, there is a lot of road to be driven still to date in 2024. Lando needs to fix for that ASAP, forthwith, lest he want to be a back marker or even finish second in this championship. Max Verstappen, let's talk about him because it's techie for Max, right? I've often argued that as goaty as Max Verstappen is, when he's 20 seconds down the track, you don't get to see it. In that RB19, he was brilliant, barely missed a step. But where I get to see Max Verstappen, his true greatness is when he doesn't necessarily have the car underneath him, when he's fixing for the setup in real time, trying to tinker to make that car turn in. These are the travails of that RB20 car as at September of 2024. That car was nowhere in free practice. Helmut Marko came out overnight and said that RBVs are cash up are quicker than us. And that means that we therefore have a problem that Enrico Balbo, Pierre Vacher, Gianpiero Lambiase and Max Verstappen needs to fix for now. Because otherwise, that championship, by virtue of Lando Norris's challenge, is going away. Max Verstappen, together with the aforementioned, fixed for it going into quali, didn't they? Tyre pressures et al. Fixed for the suspension, made it stiffer both vertically and laterally, made it handle better. Still, Maximilian Verstappen, when you see he's on board, he's wrestling with that car like this. It's Street Fighter settings. And I say all that to say this. When Max doesn't have the car underneath him, that's when you'll see him gap Checo Perez. That's when you'll see him be the difference maker in earnest. Toto Wolff said a couple of races back, but no longer a Red Bull winning races. These are Max Verstappen. He indeed is making the difference. And when he doesn't have the car underneath him, it's never more evident than now. Let's talk about Scuderia Ferrari very quickly, because again, they didn't shine themselves in glory. My guy, Carlos Sainz Jr., oversteering yet again. Unforced error. GP, Charles Leclerc too. And again, this wasn't the worst mistakes that he's made. This wasn't a Paul Ricard per se. But yet and still, track infringement settings. Now, Charles Leclerc post-quali complained about tyre pressures, tyre temps, that he didn't have them underneath him, not like he had in free practice. And that's weird. These drivers are declaring war on Pirelli because there are too much variables in there, too much seasonal variance. All of a sudden in one session, you might have the tyres underneath you, and then you put a next compound on, your softs, and then you go mediums, and then all of a sudden the performance just disappears. George Russell, head of the GPDA, the Drivers Association, has spoken to this, swearing over the radio that his performance just went gonzo. In stark contrast, however, Lewis Hamilton was right up there. For once, he benefited from the tyre lottery and hustled that car along to a position outperforming it. Let us go. And finally, Danny Ric and Checo, the biggest losers of this qualifying session. Danny Ric is gonzo for the avoidance of doubt, and he cut a forlorn figure in the post-quali presser. Everybody's been saying Yuki Tsunoda, Max Verstappen, that if this is his last race, then he's got lots of options going forward. He's a brilliant man, a great person, and a better, even better personality to have up and down the grid. We will miss him. But what we've seen just there epitomises the reason why he can no longer stay on the paddock. He's been roundly outperformed by his teammates ever since he left Red Bull, having nailed Sebastian Vettel. Of course, he was last of the late breakers. Once upon a time, Danny Ric was one of the very, very good ones, scheduled to be the next one up, having taken Sebastian Vettel shine from him. Four-time champion, back to back to back to back at the time. Danny Ric once upon a time was brilliant, but that guy's lost. He's been gone for ages. And F1 is a sport where what have you done for me lately is all that matters, with young hungry lions like Colapinto, Antonelli, Doohan, Behrman, all set to join next year. What do you mean? Sadly for Danny Rick, there's no space at the inn, and I expect over the next couple of weeks, the summer break, the second summer break after Singapore, Danny Rick will be replaced by one Liam Lawson. So too, we want to talk about Checo very quickly, because again, he talked about struggling with that car, as was Max Verstappen. Now, what Checo needed to do is build on the momentum that he accrued at the last Grand Prix in Azerbaijan. His dad hasn't been well, and in that sense, we need to extend some empathy. But the story as far as Checo Perez's performance or underperformance season to date is a stern one. It's hard for me to present a case against Helmut Marko and Christian Horner doing like they will do with Danny Rick and having a conversation in earnest about Checo Perez's material underperformance year to date. He's not been great, yeeting it into the barrier when you've got the stakeholders, the 51% owners, the Tayuvidi family there in attendance. He's been massively shy of Maximilian Verstappen every single Grand Prix apart from Azerbaijan. Therefore, the irony is not lost on me that he fails yet again to build on the not insubstantial momentum that he accrued last race. Checo Perez, man formerly known as the Mexican Minister of Defense. Sadly, chap, notwithstanding the 20 to 30 million US dollars that you bring into Red Bull, notwithstanding all the energy drinks that you sell in North America and Latin America, notwithstanding the aforementioned, sadly, F1 is meritocracy. This is the thread that underpins it. And therefore, Christian Horner and Helmut Marko have themselves a decision to make, and they need to make it in performance terms now. Why? Because McLaren have the whip hand as far as the Constructors' Championships, and if they're not careful, that could be the Drivers' Championships too. By the humanity.